So it was kind of interesting. Matthew Stafford used two other teams, the Raiders and the Giants, to come to an agreement with the Rams. And maybe the Rams were smart for doing that, but I felt like both of those teams were used by Sean McVay and Les Snead of the Rams to get Matthew Stafford, back in uniform and back underneath Rams control.
Yeah, I mean, and it was strange for a number of reasons. One, the fact that this team looked so unbelievably good at the end of the year and played the champion Philadelphia Eagles right to the end in the divisional round, a team that blew out the Commanders, then blew out the Chiefs. They're like, you're right there. You're close. I mean, what is going on? It doesn't make any sense. And you see the Raiders, stepping up and offering a massive contract, 2 years, $100 million guaranteed, and he still chose to be with the Rams. Just feels like that's just comfortable for him. Sean McVay, he's probably not going to have as much success with the Giants or the Raiders. So, that is done, and that team's going to contend in the NFC without a doubt. Without Cooper Kupp, they'll find a way to figure that out. But, now, where do the Giants go? And I know Aaron Rodgers is on that list. I wouldn't do it. I think that he's finished. I don't believe that he's going to stay healthy for an entire season. Yes, he played every one of the games last year. He was hurt for most of them and did not look like a good player. But as far as the other options go, if the Giants did it, I wouldn't say, wow, that's the worst thing in the world. They just don't have a lot of great options if you're going to have a stopgap guy and then draft someone else. But if I'm Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, I look in a different direction when it comes to the quarterback. And Aaron Rodgers just, to end his career bouncing around the slop football here in New York is not a good way to end a career. You know what I'm saying?
Slop football.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Again, it's going to come down to cost. And, can they save some money here and bring somebody in that's legitimate? The reason why I wouldn't do it if I were the Giants, it has nothing to do with his ability to play, because I still think he can play, because I think we saw that the second half of the season when he started getting healthy again, except for the Buffalo game up in Buffalo late in the season where Buffalo needed that game. The reason that I wouldn't do it is because I do believe that he is, and this is my speculation, he's inflexible when it comes to the type of offense you're going to run. And the type of offense I think that Brian Daboll wants to run doesn't fit what Aaron Rodgers wants to do. And it's nice to have a guy with a great arm who's a Hall of Fame career and is a great player. I just don't see how this offense with Brian Daboll running it fits Aaron Rodgers. And would they have to change everything to try to meet the demands of a 41-year-old headstrong quarterback?
Well, also,
and that's why I wouldn't do it. But I also understand why they may do it, because they may have no other options, and if they're trying to save their collective jobs and they do draft a young quarterback, then it is a pretty good option to have in terms of selling it maybe to your fan base, to your sponsorships, that, hey, we have one of the most popular players in the league, under center for us. So on one hand, I understand why they would consider it and why they may do it. And on the other hand, I'm telling you why I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it either. I don't know that, him still being able to play. I know there were a couple games in there where he looked really, really good. I just don't know how he stays healthy. But as far as the offense thing goes, I think if you were to believe the reports that he really wanted to stay and have another year with the Jets because he didn't want to go out like that, I think he'll be more amenable to changing his ways this time around. No, listen, I'll tell you why. It didn't work. And he's 100 years old, and he doesn't want to end like that. He can't dictate the terms anymore. He can't. He could dictate the terms when he came from Green Bay. He can't dictate the terms now.
I'm just telling you that it's real. I mean, in this situation, it is really hard to teach an old dog new tricks. And I know that's it's easy to say that. But I see it that way. When Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay and Tom Brady was still at the height of his game, especially last year when they made the playoffs, but they didn't make it to the Super Bowl. I mean, he was calling, 50 pass plays a game, doing it his way. Like, you have to understand, these guys have lasted so long that they've had so much success that it is really hard this late in their career to tell them, oh, guess what? We're going to be running RPOs. Well, no, we're not going to be running RPOs with Aaron Rodgers. No. I can tell you that.
No, of course not.
Which is what Brian Daboll loves.
He knows he can't do that with Aaron Rodgers. It has to be somewhat of a meeting in the middle. I think that Aaron Rodgers is smart enough to say, all right, if I have to go to a team that wants me and not a lot of team wants me, I can't go in there and tell everybody how to do everything again. I can't. And he knew that. If he wanted to stay with the Jets, it was a brand new offensive coordinator, a brand new system they're bringing in, young guys, everything else. He couldn't walk in there and be like, okay, this is how we're running the offense. And he knows that at this point. It would have to be a meeting in the middle. I think the bigger problem with Aaron Rodgers and the Giants is Brian Daboll's personality. With Aaron Rodgers, if things aren't going well, the two of those guys are going to be screaming at each other.
But that's part of it. I mean, that's like he is going to be an inflexible guy. Like I could see him more now. I could see him more, with Pete Carroll than I can with Brian Daboll.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know where the Giants turn. I mean, I know that they're having these discussions. All the reports are out there. Again, I can understand why they're discussing it. I can understand why they would consider it. But I'm telling you, the inflexibility of Aaron Rodgers compared to this offense and this coach, which is what you just touched on, I agree with, and that's why I wouldn't do it. But, for us and what we do for a living here, if they do it, that is like gold. That is gold for us. So,
sure.
Have something to talk about. Now, the interesting thing is, what are the Jets going to do? So I believe that Tyrod Taylor is going to be their starting quarterback when the season starts. I don't know if he'll make it through the first 3 games or not, but I do believe that most likely he'll be their starting quarterback, which probably doesn't excite a lot of people, but it does give them at least a veteran. He's a 500 quarterback. He's a good guy. Everybody loves him in the locker room, and he's a serviceable stopgap player, especially if they draft somebody that is going to be young, or they bring in somebody like a Justin Fields. Let's face it, Aaron Glenn was the defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. He has seen Sam Darnold. He has seen Justin Fields. He has seen all these guys that came through the NFC North. So maybe that's where they go to or they look at. And it's not going to be Sam Darnold, of course. But I would say this whole notion about Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson getting contract extensions, throw that out the window. I'm telling you right now, the Jets have 2 years of control on both of these players. And the fact that they want contracts doesn't mean a hill of beans to anybody. And the fact that Darren Muji was asked this at the Combine, and he gave some innocuous answer that really was just a word salad. Like, we want young players. We want to keep our young players, but we don't have to do anything with these contracts, regardless of what these young players want and regardless of what they've already accomplished. The team has them for 2 more years. They have them for their final year of their rookie contract and their 5th-year option. If they want to sign contracts right now, they are going to have to take a lot less money, which means if they go on and have actually really good the next 2 or 3 years and they sign the contract now, in 3 years they're going to be pissed because they're not making what everybody else is making at that point in time. So unfortunately for those 2 guys, regardless of whether or not they want new contracts, you think they deserve new contracts, they're not getting new contracts unless they take significantly less money and there is a discount for the team over these next 2 years, and then pushes it out maybe another 3 years. That's the only way I could see them getting new contracts. So this whole notion about they want new contracts. Everybody, hey, look, Jamar Chase wanted a new contract. Justin Jefferson wanted a new contract. What do they have to do? They had to play through their 5th year.
Yes. And also those guys have accomplished so much more than Garrett Wilson has. And you could talk about, they have better quarterbacks or this or that. I mean, those guys are the best in the game. 1, 2 in whatever way you want to put them. Garrett Wilson isn't anywhere near that. Even when Aaron Rodgers came in and was playing well, Garrett Wilson wasn't someone that he was looking at first. It was all about Davante Adams when Davante Adams got here.
The only type of player that's going to get a new contract after his 3rd year, if he continues to play the way he played this year, I don't know if C.J. Stroud will have it in Houston. He may get it in Houston if he has a great year in his 3rd year, would be Jaden Daniels. Or maybe Drake May, if he leads them to the playoffs this year, that they'll do something after their 3rd year just to kind of hold down the overall enormity of the contract, especially when those guys, if they have success, get to their contract years. But the fact that, you're thinking that like Sauce Gardner's been an all-pro twice, that's great. He had a terrible year this year. And, he's got to come back and he's got to have another all-pro year. He's got to show that he can be a leader on defense. And then maybe, just maybe, you consider ripping up that 5th year or using that 5th year as a a springboard to maybe a 4-year contract extension. But nobody is getting contract extensions right now. They might as well just forget about it. And then, and then it's up to them to, again, show the Jets that they do belong here long term. So I don't see those contracts coming at all.
Yeah, another one of these things where it says, the Jets are, looking for trade partners with Davante Adams. When a team is going to release a guy, no one is trading for him. Davante Adams is not coming back here to the Jets.
Especially if you trade for him, you gotta pay him $38 million.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why they're even trying to do that. Just release the guy, and that's the end of it. And by the way, Monday at noon, a week from today at noon, is when the free agency starts. It's that legal tampering period. I don't know why they still even bother with that whole thing. That's exactly when all the names start flying around right at noon, and you start seeing those contracts coming in.
And that's when all these players, they want to be released. Believe me, Davante Adams, unless Davante Adams or the Jets come to him and say, who would you like to go play for? Who out there would you like to go play for? And maybe we can get this thing done before free agency. And maybe a team that would be willing to trade a 7th-round pick for him or something like that, because there's no reason to trade for him, and maybe they're trying to get an extra pick here or there. I mean, it's not shocking that Deebo Samuel only got a 5th-round pick back to the 49ers because of the amount of money he's owed.
Yeah, and I know that people are lauding that, and, oh, man, Deebo Samuel's going to this team. He's got Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. I don't know that Deebo Samuel is ever going to be the player that earned that big contract. I mean, he was one of the most electrifying players in football prior to getting that deal. He looks slow. He looks bigger. Hopefully he can get back for the Commanders' sake, back to where he was. But I don't look at this as that much of a coup like everybody else did. Like, oh my goodness, this is the greatest deal in the history of the world. That guy looks more done to me than still in his prime.
I will say that I was really into this trade. I thought it was a great trade by the Commanders. They have room. They have to build around their young quarterback. And Cliff Kingsbury now gets another little piece of his offense where he can do a lot of different things with Deebo. And I have to believe that Deebo Samuel will be highly motivated and should be working out like a madman this offseason and be ready to go with his new team. I thought that was a good trade. And I think the guys that at the Commanders are really excited about this. Remember, Adam Peters knew him from San Francisco, the GM for the Commanders. That's where he came from. So that there is some familiarity with the player from the GM standpoint. It's bad for the Giants. It's just bad for the Giants. It's just another person that you have to worry about, and I think another person who will be a highly motivated player for a team that you're going to see twice.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope that he'd be highly motivated. I mean, they really didn't look to him as much last year. He was bitching and moaning about targets. Then when he got more targets after he complained, he was dropping footballs all over the place. I mean, I don't know. He's going to have to be a different player this year than he was last year for that to be a huge impact. But then again, he's being put together with one of the most exciting quarterbacks in football right now. So a lot of those guys, and there were guys like, Zacchaeus and some of these other dudes that were out there that we never knew their names that were making big catches for the Commanders because Jaden Daniels was being Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I think it's a smart trade. Like I thought last year, the Brian Burns trade by the Giants was a smart trade, and maybe it will still bear itself out. As he's a really good player and a really good locker room guy. It didn't turn out all that well for him last year or the Giants last year, but nonetheless, they still got themselves a really good player, and I think that the Commanders got themselves a really good player because of Terry McLaurin, because of Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury. I think those three guys right there, and him coming to a new team is going to motivate him. So that offense was already a pain in the ass to handle. It's only going to get worse.